Hello, everyone. Welcome to your brand new podcast called In Your Shoes. This podcast is for you to learn more about new people and professions from around the world. I would like to take you on a journey to understand the life and times of a new person every 2 weeks and get a chance to get into their shoes to learn what they do, why they do, and how they do it.
On the show today, I have Jeevan Dongre. I have known Jeevan for almost a decade. We first came together in 2011 to form a community in India for Amazon Web Services users. I have known Jeevan to be a community leader with a passion for helping and supporting others in the technology space. I'm so excited to have him today on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Jeevan.
Thank you so much, Vivek.
Jeevan, for our podcast listeners, let's share a little bit about yourself, like where you are coming from and what you do for a living today.
I am Jeevan. I am from Mysore, India, a small town in India, and right now I am based out of Bangalore, which is called Silicon City of India. Um, I for living I do run a startup called Anstack, which is into serverless consulting. Apart from running my own startup, I also run AWS User Group Bangalore. As Vivek mentioned earlier, we all came together almost a decade ago to start this community, and have been running this community for the last 10 years. Apart from this, I used to work in different startups as DevOps engineer, DevOps architect, and also engineering manager. And last year is when I decided to quit my full-time job and jump onto the startup bandwagon.
Thank you, Jeevan. It's so exciting to hear from that. So, Jeevan, you said that you moved from working for a larger organization, including startups, and then now running your own company. How was that transition for you?
So that transition was, I feel it's quite well planned, at least for me, because I always wanted to move towards a bigger and larger companies as and when I grow in my career. So I started from a small startup, like five, six people startup, and then later joined a large organization, which is like 5,000, 6,000 people. And that is when I felt, okay, this is the right time to start something on my own. And I was always passionate to start something on my own. And I constantly, I was constantly preparing for the journey that, I don't want to be an employee forever. I want to do something on my own. I think that passion and that ambition was very strong. And eventually it happened. I just went with the flow. Looks like it went with the flow, but there was a lot of planning also involved in the back end.
All right. So, Jeevan, you mentioned that there was some planning involved and it was not like sudden jump. Can you share a little bit, if you can, on what sort of planning had to go behind your transition from working as an employee to becoming as an employer?
To become an employer, it is always important to have a wide experience, working with a smaller team and then working with a larger team. In terms of larger team, one will learn a lot of discipline, more organized the process, communication, people management. Working with smaller team made me technically strong. Learned a lot of good things about technology. That is when I learned about DevOps, AWS Cloud, and a lot of other things. So I always wanted to have a mix and match of both the world, from a startup to an enterprise. So that was the plan bit, and rest of the thing just follows. I mean, I started my career in a very small startup, working for a government organization. Then I moved to a e-commerce company. I worked there for 5 years, and e-commerce was at peak during that time. And then I moved to a technology startup, then which got acquired by a large company. So I have seen from small company transition towards a larger company. That experience is really, really important to become a employer. In this process, we learn a lot of things.
That's actually really insightful. So what I understood is your experience and diverse experience across working for a larger team and larger setup taught you to become more disciplined and focus on skills like people management. And when you had worked in smaller team, you essentially got lots of technology skills and skill sets for running and or basically making things happen. And you mentioned that the mix and match of these both worlds was really an important ingredient to the decision that you made to start your own organization.
Yep.
Could you share what kind of challenges you had to face when you moved from a smaller setup to a larger organization, as you said, 5,000, 6,000 people? And how was that transition for you?
When I was working with a smaller team based out of Bangalore, not global, no global presence, it was quite easy to catch people, get things done, talk to them over a cup of coffee, understand what they do, and you have a strong connection. You build a connection with the people, and the working becomes very easy. Getting things becomes very
Hmm.
easy. When you move to a larger organization, number one, a lot of people get disappointed or little upset is the process. They have to follow a lot of process when they enter a large organization. That is number one. And number two, an organization which has got global presence, working out of different countries, different time zones, and different people. And most of the time, we don't get to meet all of them. It's
Hmm.
just through the online conferencing, video calls, we talk to them. There is very little chance of connecting with them emotionally, right?
Right.
So that's a major challenge what I see in terms of moving from a smaller organization to larger organization. And another thing would be I uh, I think process is a major thing, Vivek. When
Okay.
I mean in startup, I write the code, somebody else's review is like sitting next cubicle. I can just say, hey, can you just review my code? But in a larger organization, probably the person who is reviewing the code is sitting in another part of the world,
Right.
and it takes a lot of time to get the review, push the code, and whatnot. So I think that is a kind of that is little that will be a little stressful for people who come from a small organization to a large organization.
Right. Thank you, Jeevan. So, Jeevan, if someone listening to this podcast is not fully aware of the field and the domain that you work in, running your own organization, can
Mhm.
you just briefly describe what kind of work do you do and what kind of problems do you solve for customers?
Um, So as I said earlier, we are completely into serverless. We don't do anything which runs within a VM environment or even a container environment. We only take up things which can be, executed on serverless platform, may it be any cloud, AWS, Azure, or Google. We help customers to migrate from a typical EC2 stack to serverless stack, Lambda, API Gateway, Azure Functions, Google Cloud Functions. And we also build products on top of pure serverless stacks without running an EC2 instance or without running a VM in any of the cloud. So this is what we do for as Anstack. This is what we do, and we also help people to build amazing UX for their product and also build UI for the product. If not the whole product, we only take up the UX and UI part. This is what we do at Anstack.
Okay. And Jeevan, I like that you emphasized on using serverless instead of relying on premise or like virtual machines. What made you focus solely on serverless as a way to solve problems for your customers?
So I have been DevOps engineer for most of my career, auto scaling EC2 instances, bringing down VMs, bringing up VMs, configuring VMs, load balancing VMs, take care of network ingress, and all these things. Not typical DevOps guy. And serverless was a kind of enlightenment for me because there is no concept of, okay, I'm getting more traffic, I need to scale up my EC2 instances, make sure RDS is cool, all the queries are returning, and my network is cool. There is no network uh, problem or something like that. So serverless just works seamlessly without much of an intervention from a DevOps engineer or a system admin. And it also help customers or organization to purely focus on building their business rather than building the infrastructure. So today, what I feel, if you look at any large organization, enterprise, they spend almost 50% of their time building applications, business applications, and 50% of the time goes in building infrastructure, make sure there are enough hardware in the data center, the network is good, the storage is good, electricity, this, that, and all. So serverless eliminates all these things. It will help people and customers focus only on building their business application rather than building their infrastructure. And another major advantage of serverless is highly available and it's highly scalable because we are offloading a lot of those management problem to the cloud service provider. And another thing about major advantage about serverless is it's a real pay as you go model. For example, if you have an application running within an EC2 environment or a VM environment, whether you get the traffic or not, whether people use your application or not, you still have to pay for the EC2. Uh, in terms of serverless, it's only per invocation. If somebody sends a request, you only pay for that request, and you won't have to pay for just running the VM all the time. So that's a major cost advantage in serverless.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that information with the listeners, Jeevan. So, Jeevan, you mentioned in the beginning when you were introducing yourself that you like, and we have been known each other for a while, especially in the community space. So, can you also briefly share your experience running and growing this community of Amazon Web Services users in India?
I must say, the community has contributed a lot to my personal life. To it actually made me a better person. So we all started. We started AWS user group almost a decade ago, and I still remember this memories. Memories are still fresh. We had one of the evangelists of AWS as a inaugural speaker, and I learned a lot of things from you and Shri and other people from the user group. How you talk to people, how how you inspired them to become a speaker, how we used to inspire people to attend user group and stuff like that. And I was fresh out of college, and I was closely observing the activities you guys doing around the user group. And there were times when we had only 10 people, though we still managed to keep the interest of the people and try to do some kind of activity. But eventually, we all went to different directions, and the meetup was paused for few years. I think 1 or 2 years it was paused, and finally I decided one day it was just a wake up call that what. One morning I just woke up and realized, okay, we have this AWS groups which we are not doing anything. Let me try to do something. I think I also sent you an email. I still remember you connecting me with Joydeep Sen Sharma. He was our first speaker from Qbol, one of the co-founder of Qbol. We scheduled this meetup at AWS office itself, and after the meetup, one of the AWS employee walked to me and said, "Yeah, you know what? This is Bangalore. We have such a great tech community. We should that the user group and the meetup should not die, and you should continue to grow this user group." That is kind of a life changing moment for me, and I decided no matter what, I will not stop running the user group. So I continued that passion. I continued that force. I met a lot of good people. We had great speakers, and in this journey, I also found Habib, who became one of the co-organizer as well, and to run the user group in a very different way. We had anniversaries meetups as well sometimes. We had our fifth anniversary meetup as well, I think in the 2016. The community kept growing stronger and stronger. We added a lot of people, a lot of speakers, a lot of members, and finally, AWS also recognized our contribution. I think 2016 or 17, and they also started helping us in terms of connecting people to speakers and the organization where we can host meetups. In the 2017 or 18, I think 17 is when we AWS proposed the format called AWS Community Day, where it actually motivates and inspires the local communities to run 1 day or 2 day events in and around AWS technologies and services. And Habib and I, we decided no, we should do this, and we hosted our first community in the year 2017. We had 200, 250 people. It was a paid event. We charged some 200 rupees, like 25, $30. It was running in two locations. We had a huge success, and the next year 2018 is when I decided to take this to a next level, and I had a team. Thankfully I had a team. I had a team around me who could take up various responsibilities. And in the year 2018 we had 450 people attending the event with 3 tracks and 37 speakers, and that is when the community started growing in an exponential way, like an hockey stick way. In last year, we did an event, same event, AWS Community Day for 2 days, 1 day workshop, 1 day conference, and we had 1,000 people attending the conference, and it happened in one of the very fancy five-star hotels in Bangalore. From being a small community user group to scaling up to an 8,000 plus user group with 3 community days, and we were the first. Bangalore user group was the first user group to host community day, and I think since last year, a lot of other cities like Chennai and Mumbai, they also hosted community days. And another thing is Bangalore user group as a user group, it inspired a lot of other cities to start the user group activity, especially in Chennai, Kochi, Mumbai. So we have a very active community activities, happening in these cities as well. In the journey of the whole, building the community, I met so many amazing people, so many good speakers. I learned a lot in terms of technology and what interpersonal skill. It actually made me a better person. I mean, I think if I had to read like hundreds and thousands of books to gain so much of knowledge, or probably blogs or websites or videos, but meeting people, learning from each other is the biggest, in the best form of learning, which actually inspired me to keep this community grow and keep this community active. The primary reason and the primary inspiration for me to keep this community is because I used to meet so many people. I get to meet so many amazing people, in fact.
Right. I totally see. I think your contribution and the other members, especially organizers, to kind of grow this community to what it is today is just so amazing and so heartwarming to see. Where I think we, as you said, the first event we had like few people and speakers, and we had times where there was no one. And now when you had so successful community events behind and such a thriving set of people and an engaged set of people, I think it's such. I'm quite happy to see the leadership that you and the other members took, and took the chance and the opportunity when there was no one. So this is something which I still look back and I say this is one of the greatest things that I could see, that people could take up positions and fill a void which exists without permission. And that's what you did. And I think that's a lot of the reasons why I think you are successful today, and you've been able to venture into starting your company. So I'm really so happy and also thankful in sense that you continued, you persevered, and you made it. So I'm really happy for that, Jeevan.
Thank you so much, Vivek.
Jeevan, you said that you started working in the field of as a DevOps engineer. So could you describe what led you to choose focusing on DevOps in the initial parts of your career, and what did you learn through your journey in that space?
This is a very interesting question. I would like to answer it in a very, very honest way. I was a very bad and pathetic developer. I mean, I never used to I never used to write a great code. It was always, it used to work, but it was really, really bad in terms of the coding standards and everything. Um, but I used to understand the system level concept really well. And my final year project in engineering, during my engineering, was also on cloud computing. I worked on Google App Engine during my final year. So I was always, attracted towards the systems, the virtualization, the data center, and stuff like that. But I was never had an opportunity to work on those things. So when I was working in one of the e-commerce companies, that is when they wanted somebody to look after the infrastructure part. We were running on AWS, and that is when I took charge. And I said, you know what, I anyways suck at my programming skills. Why don't you allow me to take this up? And my CTO and the co-founder of the company was very open enough to give me that opportunity. And that is when I started learning what is EC2, how do I SSH to a system, how do I install a package, may it an Apache engine, what is Nginx, what is Apache, what is an app server, what is a web server, how does RDS work. So that is when the journey of the entire DevOps started. And eventually I started I used to write pathetic Java code, and I was very happy writing Ruby code. I was a Ruby developer. I started writing Ruby code, and I started enjoying that as well. And I think I gave enough time for the DevOps part of my career. And that is how I got immersed into this DevOps profession and career.
So thanks, Jeevan, for replying that. I think I see that you realized your strength and you double down on that, to figure out that this is the space where you can be successful and you can make impact.
Yeah, and another thing is, more than I realized my strength, I realized my weakness. So I had to overcome that. That was the point. Instead of looking at what is my strength, I very quickly realized what is my weakness.
And you did not keep those weaknesses affecting you, right? So you
Yep, yep,
moved on,
yeah,
you persevered, and you found your niche.
yeah, yep.
Awesome. And Jeevan, with now you run this consulting firm, what keeps you going and hopeful for this field of serverless computing?
Serverless is today, if I have to tell what the state of serverless is, it's it's growing every day. It's getting more and more mature. It's gaining a lot of traction. A lot of enterprises apparently looking at serverless technology, because even enterprises are slowly realizing that running a VM or spending on VM based environment makes no sense, since uh, we can get the same thing out of serverless platform. So I feel this is cloud 2.0. According to me, Cloud 1.0 was the EC2 and the VMs, and Cloud 2.0 is serverless, where people don't bother about their infrastructure. What is the RAM, what is the CPU, what is the memory, and stuff like that. They only focus on, I need this function, I need these microservices to run at so and so condition. That's all. So I feel this is a cloud 2.0 of, cloud 2.0. So I feel eventually all the enterprises or even startups and SMEs start building their products on serverless because it accelerates the development part, because there is absolutely no time spent to configure or build infrastructure. Get started with the business application mindset, worry about your product management, how the UX should be, how the UI should be. I think that's the primary factor, and also the cost which is involved in terms of building infrastructure. That will be cost and time which involves building infrastructure that will be eliminated to a large extent. I think that is something which will pull a lot of companies and organizations to look at serverless. And it also needs some kind of unlearning here and there. So that is where we actually come as a consultant to help companies and organizations understand what serverless is, and we also help them to migrate their existing applications to serverless, or probably help them to build new applications on serverless.
Right. So, Jivan, in your current role running this organization and Stack, what kind of challenges have you been facing with respect to the domain of the work, and also the challenges around you taking up a new role of running an organization?
One primary challenge being the lack of education about serverless. People always think, what is the security? How is the security on serverless? I tired of answering that question. Security is something which can get as creative as possible, right? So that the lack of education is the primary thing, and a lot of people think you just copy paste the code which is running in a VM to Lambda, it will start working. That is not true. Primarily it adds up to the education as well. And second thing is, they underestimate the power of serverless. There are a lot of things which can be built purely on serverless platforms without running an EC2 instance, in fact. And in spite of sharing the use cases, case studies from different large organizations, people are still skeptical to look at serverless. As of now, I think that's the major challenge what I am facing. And a lot of people are also a little hesitant to move to serverless platform. It's like, anyways, it's running on EC2, let it run. I don't want to take any risk of migration or anything like that, especially in banking and finance sector, the complex and sophisticated sector. These are the two primary challenges what I face today.
And would you have any personal challenges? You're like a consultant, and second, you're kind of running this organization as an employer.
Yes, we have a lot of challenges. In fact, number one challenge is how do I get more customers. Number two challenge is how do I hire the best talent. And number three is how do I do all this sitting at home. So that's number three is the major challenge. I think the first couple of years will actually go in understanding the business. And as a co-founder or founder, we tend to deviate a lot from our vision and our objectives. We get attracted to a lot of new things. Let's do this, let's do that, without even sometimes realizing, no, this is not what we actually this is not the reason why we started the company. We get diverted to a lot of other things, shiny new things, to keep our focus very strong. And first couple of years, it goes in building that brand. What is Handstack? Why are we here? And also building good customer use cases. In the technology world, the marketing gimmick or sales doesn't work. It's purely the use cases and our technical capabilities which works, right? So in first couple of years just goes in building those use cases, getting into customers engagement to build complex stuff so that it adds to our technical capabilities. So these are the things which are my focus as of now.
All right. So, Jeevan, we'll take a segue from here to talk about perceptions and stereotypes. So, for me, I think the way I see it is every job and profession has some set of stereotypes attached to it, right? These are perceptions from outside. Sometimes they are true in a sense, and sometimes they are not entirely correct. Uh, from your vantage point, from your view, what are the stereotypes of the line of work that you are in?
Okay, I think I have a big list to answer this. I will answer. I'll try to answer this in multiple ways. One,
Sure.
as a software professional, especially in India, people think software professionals are not hardworking. They just sit and make money. They get to work from home, and they usually don't work. When they say working from home, they just chill. And every other software engineer, they get paid like millions and millions of rupees as their salary every month. So this is kind of from common man point of view about a software engineer. As an entrepreneur, the major challenge is people think that once you have a startup, you'll get funding, you get acquired, you make millions of dollars, which is not true. Not every other startup, not every other company is built to get acquired or get funding. It depends on what founders or co-founders want. Um, and people think once we make millions of dollars, we get retired and we are not answerable to anything. And that is not true. As a co-founder or an entrepreneur, if you get funding, that's you're answerable to a lot more people. Actually, that is not true. People also think um, entrepreneurs don't work really hard. Actually, entrepreneurs work really, really hard because everything is in their hand. They have to earn their meal every day. They cannot afford to chill or relax. But one more thing I would like to add as a positive point is we can choose when we want to work. Mm, like we can work on Sundays. We can say, okay, Monday I'm taking it off, or at least I have something to do. So that luxury we have, definitely. And another perspective from a software engineer standpoint is, especially people like my parents, my in-laws, or old people, they can, as a computer software professional, they think we can fix any electronic devices or electric devices as well. That is not true. And we most of the software professionals, they don't do tech support. They do write a lot of good code. Software professional doesn't mean they are tech support. And a lot of people also think that we get to travel a lot as a IT professional, the glamorous airport life and all. That happens only for the C-level executives or a sales or for salespeople, not for a regular software engineer. That is also not true. So these are the things I would like to add as a stereotype, especially from India's standpoint, where people stereotype like software engineers are like this and like that. That's not true. And most of the people think that we survive on junk food, which is also not true. And most of the people don't work in night shift as well.
Thank you, Jeevan, for sharing that. So, Jeevan, you have in the last 30 minutes when we were speaking about your career, your experiences, there are a few things that stood out for me. One is you being a community leader, a person experienced in DevOps and running infrastructure, and then now as an entrepreneur. And for me, these three pieces are in some ways linked to each other and also still distinct. And I would like you to offer advice to someone who is listening to this call and they would like to go into either leading a community or starting a community for sake, and then perhaps getting into DevOps. So for me, I want to check what would be the advice that you will offer these people who are trying to get into first building and grooming a community, and second, if they want to get into the whole domain of DevOps and running infrastructure. So what is the advice for them? What experiences would you like them to have?
Number one, if you are trying to build a community, it is not easy to build a community. It is as good as building a company. Though you don't have any uh, mindset of making profit or making money out of it, building community is hard, especially in today's age with pandemic around. People don't want to step out of their houses. Everything is online, and there are a lot of online communities coming up every day. It is very hard to build. Don't give up. Whether you find a speaker or not, whether you have enough audience or not, make sure you run the show. As in the show business, people usually tell the show must go on. Have that attitude, no matter what, the show must go on. uh, don't give up, and be persistent about running the user group. And it is a long marathon. Don't expect short term success. It almost took me and my team and everybody around the community almost a decade to reach 8,000 people in the group. It took us more than 100 plus user group activities, offline activities, to reach that number. Don't do it for sake of money. Don't do it for the sake of fame. If you are really passionate talking to a lot of people, if you have patience talking to a lot of people, understanding them, make them curious. You being curious, understand what they are doing, what is the problem they are trying to solve. If you have a people's manager, if you are a people's man, then get into community, building a community. Otherwise, I strongly suggest don't even think about building a community. It's hard. If you are an introvert, not for you. If you are an extrovert, yes, go for it. Like I can 100% and surely talk on behalf of Vivek as well, that he's an extrovert. He likes to go out, talk to people. He likes to meet so many people, understand what they do. If you have that kind of attitude, go ahead and build the community. Second thing is, if you want to be a DevOps engineer today, again, when I started my career as a DevOps engineer, uh, I think the term was being coined. What is DevOps and stuff, like 10 years ago almost, right? So it was very easy for me to call, I'm a DevOps engineer. I do this, I do that, and stuff like that. But today, there are so many DevOps engineers. How do you differentiate yourself? And DevOps is a very vast universe now. It's a huge ocean today. Initially, when I started, there was only AWS and there was only VM, right? Today we have containers, we have serverless, we have Azure, we have GCP, we have Kubernetes, and we have lot and lot of tools. So calling yourself a DevOps engineer will be a little hard. Start somewhere, keep learning, uh, keep learning. Finally, sometime, somewhere in the journey, you will reach that goal. That is second thing. And how this leads to starting a company. Um as I said earlier, running a community is as good as running an organization. The reason why I started a company is to overcome the pain points which I had being a DevOps engineer. I used to get 2 a.m. calls from PagerDuty. Your VM is down, the RDS is not working, the backup is not working, something like that. I really just wanted to get rid of those problems. So that is when serverless came into picture, and I was like, wow, this actually solved most of my problems. So that is when I got attracted to it. So my another advice would be, the problem. Try to solve a problem instead of finding a problem. Try to solve your own problem rather than trying to find a problem, somebody else's problem, and fix it. Right? The serverless is kind of my problem. DevOps was kind of my problem, and serverless is kind of a fix for those problems, and that is when I got attracted to that. So instead of trying to fix somebody else's problem, try to fix your own problem, and you can relate to it emotionally. If you look at any of the big unicorn startups in Swiggy, like Swiggy or any other startups, they actually try to fix their own problems in a way, and that is how they scaled the company to that a large extent.
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic points. I really liked how you ended with stating that finding the your problem and basically scratching your own itch is the first place rather than just being attracted to a particular solution. So good. So, Jeevan, we are almost at the end of our conversation. I want to check with you if you have any favorite books or podcasts or blogs that you really enjoy and you would like to share with other people on this podcast.
So I like a couple of books, out of which I suggest The World is Flat, which is a must-read book for all the budding entrepreneurs. And another,
This is from the Thomas Friedman, right?
yeah, Thomas Friedman. I mean, that was the starting point for me, at least. He starts the story from with Nandan Nilekani at golf course in Bangalore, right? I could relate to it from
Yeah.
Bangalore, right? So that was a starting point for me. And other book, what I would like to suggest is Founders Mentality. I forgot the name of the author. Founders Mentality is something which will help even the employees to think like a founder. How you're probably your senior director or VP or probably co-founder think as a business. It will help you to uh, uh, grow further and faster in your career. And another piece of advice, which is not related to books, which I always did and followed, is always dress for your next job.
Hmm.
Uh, that is really, really important. So, a lot of people today they get carried away with their current role or responsibilities. They get carried away. They don't really think beyond their current role. So always keep an eye and always keep preparing for your next role, what you want to do in life, whether you want to get promoted as a manager or a director or start something on your own or anything. Always dress for the next role is what I would like to advise the people who hear this broadcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeevan, for the recommendations. This conversation was really useful, and I think it was so good to hear from you. Also, reliving some of the moments that we shared early on. So, I'm really happy that you chose your time and you invested your time in coming into this podcast, Jeevan.
Thank you so much, Vivek, for giving an opportunity for me to talk to people and you especially and share my experiences at learning. I hope it will help few people at least.
I totally believe it will. I think there were a lot of good points. I think some gems, and I hope people take the time to go over it. And yeah, and also reach out to you in case they have questions. And in that case, Jeevan, what would be the right channel for our listeners to reach out to you in case they want to follow up?
They can reach out to me on Twitter, JEEVNDONGRE. My first name, last name is my Twitter handle.
Awesome.
And also they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. First name dot last name is my LinkedIn URL.
Fantastic. So thank you, Jeevan. And I appreciate you having yourself here. And I'm so looking forward for this podcast to go live.
Me too, Vivek. Definitely, I'm very excited about this.
Thank you for joining this podcast. I hope this was useful and you learned a lot. For more such great podcasts, please do not forget to subscribe to the podcast channel In Your Shoes on SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Music. New podcasts are uploaded every 2 weeks. Goodbye.